The X-Wing was the Rebellion's most famous fighter, and for good reason. 4 laser cannons, proton torpedoes, and enough firepower to take Star Destroyer if you hit the right spot. Luke Skywalker proved that at the Battle of Yavin when he used his X-Wing to destroy the Death Star. But here's what makes the X-Wing special. Those S-foils that split into the iconic X shape weren't just for show. When closed, they provided better atmospheric flight characteristics, but when opened, they spread the laser cannons wider for better targeting coverage and allowed the ship to vent heat more efficiently during prolonged combat. The X-Wing also had something most Rebel ships lacked, a proper life support system and ejection seat. Incom Corporation originally designed it for the Empire, but when Imperial bureaucrats dragged their feet on the contract, the entire design team defected to the Rebellion. The Empire's loss became the Rebellion's greatest asset, and X-Wings remained the backbone of New Republic fighter squadrons for decades after Endor. The Z-95 Headhunter was the grandfather of all modern starfighters, and it earned that title through decades of reliable service. This joint project between Incom Corporation and Sub-Pro Industries happened decades before the Clone Wars, establishing design principles that would influence every fighter that came after. It had that distinctive bubble canopy that gave pilots excellent visibility and twin wing-mounted blasters that would become the standard configuration for countless future designs. The Z-95 was so reliable that smugglers and pirates kept using beat-up examples long after better ships came out. It's like the Honda Civic of starfighters. Not flashy, but it just keeps working. What made the Headhunter special was its modular design. You could swap out weapon systems, add shield generators, or even install a hyperdrive if you had the credit. The ship was so versatile that clone trooper pilots used updated versions during the early Clone Wars, while civilian variants remained popular with independent operators for generations. The Z-95 proved that sometimes the best designs are the simplest ones, and its influence can be seen in everything from the ARC 170 to the X-Wing itself. ARC 170 Starfighter. Picture an X-Wing, but bigger, meaner, and like requiring 3 clone pilots to operate effectively. The ARC 170 had those same folding wings that would later influence the X-Wing design, but when they opened into that X shape, you knew business was about to get serious. This beast packed 2 massive laser cannons, a rear gunner position with twin blasters, and could carry 6 proton torpedoes, enough firepower to take on capital ships. During the Battle of Coruscant, thousands of these ships defended the Republic capital in massive formations that looked like metal storms. The ARC 170 was designed as a long-range fighter with its own hyperdrive, allowing it to operate independently far from Republic fleets. Its 3-man crew consisted of a pilot, co-pilot, forward gunner, and a rear gunner who could cover the ship's blind spots. The irony is that these same ARC 170s were used to execute Order 66. Master Plo Koon was shot down by his own clone pilots flying these ships over Cato Nemo Idea. After the war, many of these ships were retired, but their design influence lived on in the X-Wing, proving that even the Empire's enemies learned from Republic engineering. The Ewing was the X-Wing's cooler, more advanced brother that somehow never got the recognition it deserved. Designed by Freytech Incorporated for the New Republic, it featured 3 laser cannons arranged in a triangular pattern, better maneuverability than the X-Wing, and a Class 1 hyperdrive that made it perfect for long-range missions and deep reconnaissance. The Ewing was faster, more maneuverable, and had better electronics than its famous predecessor, but it suffered from 2 major problems. First, it was expensive to produce and maintain, which made it less attractive to cash-strapped New Republic commanders. Second, it had a tendency to develop technical problems that required specialized training to fix. The New Republic used these extensively after the Empire fell, particularly in Admiral Thrawn's campaign and during the Yuuzhan Vong invasion, but somehow they never achieved the same legendary status as the X-Wing. Maybe it's because they looked a little too much like a space pencil, or maybe pilots just preferred the familiar reliability of the older design. TIE Fighters. The Empire's philosophy was brutally simple. Build them cheap, fast, and completely disposable. No shields, no hyperdrive, no life support beyond a basic atmosphere recycler, just twin ion engines and 2 laser cannons. The sound they made was terrifying, that distinctive scream that announced Imperial presence across the galaxy, but honestly, experienced A-Wing pilots ate them for breakfast. The Empire built so many TIE variants that it's hard to keep track. TIE bombers with their distinctive dual pod design, TIE interceptors with their dagger-like solar panels, and the legendary TIE defenders that actually had shields and hyperdrives. Each variant was supposedly better than the last, but they all shared the same fatal flaw: if you got hit, you were probably dead. The TIE Fighter's design philosophy reflected Imperial doctrine perfectly. Overwhelming numbers of cheap, expendable units rather than expensive, well-protected craft. Imperial pilots were expected to rely on their training and the sheer volume of their squadrons rather than advanced technology. This worked against poorly equipped pirates and rebels, but skilled pilots and proper fighters could devastate entire TIE squadrons if they played their cards right. The I-7 Howunner was the Empire's attempt to fix the fundamental TIE fighter problem, and it actually worked, sort of. Unlike regular TIE fighters, the Howunner actually had shields, a hyperdrive, and proper life support systems. It was faster than a standard TIE, more maneuverable, and could operate independently without requiring a carrier ship. The problem was that it was expensive to produce and maintain, which went against everything the Empire stood for. The I-7 saw limited use, primarily with elite Imperial units and Emperor Palpatine's personal guard, which tells you something about the quality difference between Howrunners and standard TIE fighters. If even the Emperor's guards preferred these ships over regular TIEs, it makes you wonder how many Imperial pilots died simply because their superiors were too cheap to buy proper equipment. The Howunner proved that the Empire could build decent fighters when they wanted to, they just rarely wanted to. The Nauvoo N1 Starfighter ship looks like it was designed by someone who really liked chrome and had an unlimited budget for making things beautiful. The N1 is gorgeous, sure, but it's also surprisingly deadly in combat. Built by Theed Palace Space Vessel Engineering Corps, it featured a sleek, elegant design that perfectly reflected Naboo's aesthetic values. During the Battle of Naboo, these ships proved they could hold their own against the Trade Federation's Vulture Droids, demonstrating that beauty and functionality could coexist. The most famous moment in N1 history came when 9-year-old Anakin Skywalker managed to destroy an entire droid control ship with one. Either the N1 was incredibly powerful or the Trade Federation had some serious security issues. The N1's yellow finish wasn't just for show, it was actually chromium plated for both protection and to reflect Naboo's royal colors. The ship featured twin blasters, proton torpedoes, and an astromech droid socket for navigation and repairs. Vulture droids were pure nightmare fuel that haunted the dreams of Republic pilots throughout the Clone Wars. These weren't piloted by living beings, they were fully automated killing machines controlled by advanced droid brains that felt no fear, no hesitation, and no mercy. They could transform from flying mode to walking mode, which meant they could land on your ship and start tearing it apart with their mechanical claws while you were still trying to figure out what hit you. The Trade Federation and later the Separatist Alliance deployed thousands of these things during major battles, and they were absolutely ruthless in their efficiency. Each Vulture droid was equipped with 4 blaster cannons, 2 concussion missile launchers, and enough armor to shrug off light weapons fire. Their droid brains could process targeting data faster than any organic pilot, and they could perform maneuvers that would kill a living pilot through sheer G-force. The walking mode wasn't just for show. Vulture droids could use their claws to crawl across the hulls of capital ships, tearing into vital systems and generally causing chaos. They were cheap to produce, required no training, could be deployed in massive swarms that would literally darken the sky. Fighting against Vulture droids was like battling a mechanical plague that just kept coming no matter how many you shot down. Now we have the droid Tri-Fighter, picture a Vulture droid but angrier and with 3 arms instead of 2, designed by engineers who thought the original wasn't terrifying enough. These things were faster and more maneuverable than their predecessors, with improved droid brains that could process combat data even more efficiently. During the Battle of Coruscant, they swarmed Republic forces like angry mechanical wasps, overwhelming even experienced clone pilots through sheer numbers and relentless aggression. The Tri-Fighter's 3-arm design gave it better stability and allowed for more flexible weapon configuration, while its improved engines made it one of the fastest droid fighters ever built. Each arm could be equipped with different weapons, typically laser cannons, but some variants carried concussion missiles or specialized equipment. The droid brain was advanced enough to coordinate with other units in real time, allowing entire squadrons to execute complex maneuvers ships as a single entity. Like all droid fighters, tri-fighters were completely expendable, which meant they could be used for suicide attacks that no organic pilot would attempt. Geonosian starfighters were built specifically for Geonosian biology, which made them utterly unique in the galaxy. The pilot's head stuck up through a transparent bubble canopy, giving them 360-degree vision that was impossible for most humanoid species to match. Each Geonosian pilot bonded with their ship as a larva, kind of like how dragon riders work in fantasy stories, creating an almost telepathic connection between pilot and machine. The ships even had scent dispensers that provided performance feedback through the Geonosian's highly developed sense of smell. Try explaining that to your insurance company. The fighter's design reflected Geonosian insect-like aesthetics, with curved wings that resembled a giant wasp and weapon systems that fired concentrated sonic bursts rather than traditional lasers. These sonic weapons were devastatingly effective against organic targets, but less useful against heavily armored opponents. The ships were incredibly agile, able to perform maneuvers that would be impossible for conventionally designed fighters. However, they were also completely useless to non-Geonosian pilots, which limited their tactical value. After the Geonosian population was largely wiped out by the Empire, these fighters became museum pieces, beautiful, deadly, and completely unusable by anyone else in the galaxy. The Geonosian fanblade starfighters were even weirder than regular Geonosian fighters, and that's saying something. The fanblade had this massive fan-like wing that could fold out for combat, but when it was deployed, it made the ship stick out like a sore thumb on every sensor system in the galaxy. Count Dooku personally commissioned these ships for the Separatist cause, which probably explains why the Confederacy lost the war. Their leadership had questionable judgment in starfighter design. The Fanwing wasn't just for intimidation, it actually served as a sophisticated sensor array that could detect enemy movements across vast distances. When deployed, it could coordinate attacks for entire squadrons of conventional fighters, making it a valuable command and control platform. The problem was that deploying the Fanwing made the ship virtually impossible to hide and severely limited its maneuverability. Fanblade pilots had to choose between tactical awareness and survival, which is never a good position to be in during combat. The ships were used primarily in the early stages of battle to gather intelligence and coordinate attacks, then withdrawn before enemy forces could focus their fire. It was an interesting concept that might have worked if Separatists had better overall strategy, but instead it became another example of overly complex technology that looked impressive but had fatal flaws. Jedi Starfighters, Delta 7 Ether Sprite. These ships were absolute marvels of engineering, but they came with a significant catch: no hyperdrive. Instead, they had to dock with external hyperdrive rings, which was basically like having to carry your car's engine in a separate trailer every time you wanted to go somewhere. The Delta 7 Ether Sprite was sleek, fast, and perfectly suited for Jedi reflexes, but it required force sensitivity to use effectively because conventional pilots couldn't handle its lightning-fast response times. The lack of an integrated hyperdrive wasn't a design flaw, it was a deliberate choice to keep the ships light and maneuverable. The external hyperdrive rings could be jettisoned in combat, allowing the Delta 7 to achieve incredible agility. Each ship was also equipped with dual laser cannons and could carry a limited payload of concussion missiles. Jedi Interceptor, ETA2 Act. The Delta 7's smaller, more aggressive cousin that represented the evolution of Jedi Starfighter design. These ships were so advanced that they effectively bridged the gap between Republic and Imperial technology, incorporating design elements that would later influence the TIE Fighter series. The ETA2 was faster and more maneuverable than its predecessor, with better weapon systems and improved electronics, but it maintained the same requirement for force-enhanced piloting skills. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker flew these ships during the opening battle of Revenge of the Sith, and they were absolutely devastating in the right hands. The ship's design philosophy emphasized speed and agility over heavy armor, which perfectly suited Jedi combat tactics. However, like all Jedi fighters, it became obsolete after Order 66 when there were no more Jedi left to fly them. Sharp Spiral was the name of Master Sai Si Tian's personal fighter, and it was completely insane, even by Jedi standards. This modified Delta 7 had been so extensively rebuilt that it was essentially a different ship entirely. Tien had removed the shield generator and replaced it with a handmade hyperdrive system that was powerful enough to jump directly into hyperspace without an external ring. He used the Force to guide the ship through hyperspace at dangerous speeds, flying closer to mass shadows than any sane pilot would dare attempt. The ship was one of the fastest atmospheric fighters in the entire Jedi fleet, capable of maneuvers that would have torn apart most conventional starfighters. Tien had also modified the weapon systems, replacing the standard laser cannons with more powerful variants that drew directly from the ship's main power core. The modifications were so extensive that the ship required constant maintenance and could only be piloted by Tien himself. Anyone else would have been killed by the G-forces within minutes. The sharp spiral was basically held together by Force powers, prayer, and Master Tien's incredible mechanical skills. It was a testament to what could be achieved when you combined Jedi abilities with engineering genius, but it was also a reminder that there's a fine line between innovation and insanity. And that's just the beginning. From the elegant N1 to the terrifying droid tri-fighter, these starfighters defined eras, battles, and entire factions across the galaxy. Each one tells a story, not just of war, but of the cultures and philosophies that built them. But we're not done yet. In part 2, we'll dive into even more legendary starfighters, from the A-Wing's blistering speed to the brutal firepower of the Y-Wing, and explore lesser-known ships that packed a serious punch despite flying under the radar. If you thought the X-Wing had secrets, wait until you meet the Coral Skipper. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the rest of the galaxy's greatest war machines, because the best is still to come. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out more related content shown on screen.